I have to start with a little APICS story. Some of you already heard this, but I went to my very first APICS event, was the international conference in New Orleans, Louisiana in 1990. Naval Station Norfolk said, we want to do total quality management, and the best place for you to go to get educated about total quality management is APICS. So I said, okay, you know, in the Navy you go, aye, aye. So I said, aye, aye, and I went off to New Orleans, Louisiana, and there was a big meeting of about 500 people, and this man was up on the stage sort of parading back and forth across the stage, exhorting us to go back and become active at the chapter level, because that was what it was all about. And it happened to be the incoming president of APICS, who happened to be Keith Launchbury. So that was my very first moment of actually knowing who Keith Launchbury was. 3 months later, he showed up in my hometown at our local chapter meeting. And of course, I didn't want to say to him, hi Keith, I'm Claire. I saw you on the stage at the APICS conference in New Orleans, Louisiana. So the very first words out of my mouth to him were a total lie. I said, hi Keith, I'm Claire. I met you in New Orleans. And he's going, I don't remember meeting her in New Orleans. And later on he said to me that he actually said inside his head, I would have remembered meeting her in New Orleans, which I thought was pretty sweet. Anyhow, so we...
You brought a date to the meeting.
I did. I brought a date to my very first APICS meeting. So the next month, Desert Shield and Desert Storm struck. And our chapter president, who was a Navy reservist, went off to do his Navy duty and said to me, hey Claire, why don't you go to Savannah, Georgia and represent the chapter? Now I'm sort of like, I've been to exactly one chapter meeting and he wants me to go and represent the chapter at this meeting. Sure, I'll go, you know, no problem. Went to Savannah, Georgia. Guess who I ran into the very first night at the hospitality suite was Keith Launchbury. So we had our first date at an APICS region meeting. They don't have regions anymore, it's now districts, but we had our first date at an APICS region meeting. And then we got married at an APICS executive committee meeting in Grand Cayman. So I say this to you to say to you, you never know what's going to happen when you go to an APICS meeting. So anyhow, it's my pleasure to be here tonight, and I'm thrilled to talk to you about my passion. And I was just talking with these folks who are graduating from college this year, and my best words of advice to you are find your passion and then work on it, because then you'll never work a day in your life. It'll always be something that always moves you. So it took me a long time to find my passion. Frankly, I'm 70 years old and I found my passion 6 years ago. And so that's a lot of years living not working on your passion. But here I am, fortunately, passionate about things right now. So my passion is when I was sitting at a book group meeting with a group of people from my church. Book groups go, you pick a book, you read the book, a month later you sit down and you all talk about the book, and then you pick another book and you do it over and over and over again. So we were talking about a book that was set in a highly impoverished area of New England. And we were talking about poverty, the way upper middle class people talk about poverty. You know, well, it's like this, and it's like this, and it's like this, not really knowing a darn thing about what we're talking about, but we're talking about it. And one of the women in the group, who happened to have been one of my grandson's second grade school teacher, and who I knew, of course, from church, said, I have students in my classroom who have nothing to eat from the time they have Friday lunch in school until the time they have breakfast on Monday. And I turned to her and I said to her, you've got to be kidding me. Now this is in a town of 30,000 where there is no obvious homelessness, there is no obvious poverty, there aren't people, the only people on the street corner asking for money are druggies, and you know that. But I mean, there is none of that. There's no impoverished housing or people living in shacks or anything else obvious that you might equate to having a lot of poor people in your community. But I was stunned. And as a Christian, I was appalled, and I went down to the school district office and I said, hey, I hear you've got hungry kids in school and they confirmed that not only did they have hungry kids in school, but they had homeless kids in school. And I said, well, I've got some money. I forgot to tell you, I'm retired Navy, so thanks to you, I get a check every month whether I sleep in late or I wake up early, so thank you very much. So I said, I've got some money. I mean, I can throw some money at this. And they said, well, we don't really have anything we can do with your money. What we really want is we want somebody to set up a program that packs bags of food, non-perishable food, brings it to the schools, and then we will give it to those kids who are in need of food on the weekends, and they can take it home and they can have food to eat on the weekends. And I said, well, I can do that. I mean, I can do that. That's not that hard. So I decided that was what I was going to do. Went home, said to Keith, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to start a program that packs packs food in bags and delivers it to the schools so they can feed all these kids on the weekend. And Keith said, great, what are you going to call it? I said, I don't know. And he said, well, and he thought a minute, and he said, he did his little calculations, and he said, well, they're hungry for about 68 hours between Friday lunch and Monday breakfast. He says, well, let's call it End 68 Hours of Hunger. So I quick go to the internet, and sure enough, end68hoursofhunger.org is available. Buy that. End68hoursofhunger@gmail.com is available. Got that, and boom, there we are. We've got End 68 Hours of Hunger. Filed off my paperwork, sent it off to the IRS to become a 501c3, because I know I'm not paying for all of this on my own, although I certainly paid for plenty of it on my own. And little by little, got all the pieces together so that in October of 2011, we delivered our first 19 bags of food to 19 school children in 3 elementary schools in Dover, New Hampshire. We knew the need was greater than that, but that was our first batch of food went out in October, 19 bags of food. Today we're in 8 states delivering over 3,000 bags of food to children all over the country. Thank you. But what is really powerful about this is that we are 100% volunteer. Nobody makes a dime. I don't make a dime. Nobody makes a dime. In fact, we spend a lot of our own money on ink and computer paper and envelopes and stamps and postage and certificate paper and, you know, all of that kind of stuff that we need to have to run administratively. And so that's really powerful. So what that means is that when somebody donates to us, all that money goes to feed kids. None of it goes to pay for big buildings. All of our spaces are donated. And the other thing that's really cool about it is that it is a program that, because I set it up in one location, that can be duplicated. Location after location after location after location. You know, you want to feed kids in Greenville? Just do what I did. Here's the model for what you got to do. You got to get volunteers to run a program. You got to find a space to store and pack your food. You got to get people out there raising money for you. Then you go shopping, and then you buy your food, and then you pack it in bags. You get teams of people to pack it in bags and deliver it to the schools. And ta-da! You know, it's a no-brainer. It's real easy. The problem is we have 12 million hungry children in this country, 12 million. And that has come down dramatically from the number for 2012. In 2012, it was 16 million hungry children in America. So what we're talking about here is a huge supply chain problem. Because the fact is the world produces 4.5 times the amount of food that we need to feed the population on this planet. But it's a distribution problem. The food's in the wrong place. It's not in the right place, and there are rules and regulations that prohibit us, for example, from taking these leftovers that you didn't eat tonight and taking them immediately down to a homeless shelter and giving them to a homeless shelter so that those people can eat tonight. There are rules and regulations that prevent us from doing that. So the answer to the problem is to mobilize communities to take care of their own, which is exactly what End 68 Hours of Hunger has done. We've mobilized the community of Dover, the community of Somersworth, the community of York, the community of Cleveland. These communities have all been mobilized with volunteers to take care of the problem in their community. So now what I'd like to do is I'd like to challenge you with a supply chain management problem, okay? So I'm going to divide you up so that we'll have the 3 tables on this side and the 2 tables on this side. And the 2 tables on this side, what I want you to do is to drag out your phones and get on the internet and go to Walmart.com or DollarDays.com or any place you want to do. And I want you to figure out What food would you put in a bag for a 6-year-old to take home on the weekend that would cost you less than $10, all be non-perishable, and provide 3 dinners, 2 breakfasts, and 2 lunches for that child? Okay, so you can work separately, you guys over there and you guys over here, and I want a written down response as well as a presentation, because I'm going to take those written responses, because if you come up with some really cool food ideas that I don't know about, I want to take them back to my team. And you guys on this side, I want you to figure out how the flow has to work in order to get the food they're going to pack in the bags into that warehouse. So everything that you're going to do from step A to step Z to make sure that there is food in that warehouse. And again, 3 different groups. So you ready? Any questions? Yes.
Can the 6-year-old parent cook it, or does the 6-year-old need to cook it?
Has to be 6-year-old, child-friendly, edible food, because a lot of these parents, unfortunately, are not at home. Okay. Yes. I'm sorry, say that again? Okay, your task is to figure out the whole supply chain from A to Z to get that food into the warehouse where they're going to pack it. That includes fundraising, shopping, who's going to do it, how you're going to do it, how you're going to, what, you know, all of that. Okay? All right, and I'm not giving you a lot of time to do this. Everybody's got something. So let's all come back together again. Woo! Okay, so we're going to come back together again and we're going to share some of the insights that you gained through this process.
So they can.
If he'll be quiet. Okay. Let's start with the group that's getting the food into the warehouse, all the steps that they have to take to do that. So let's start with this group here. So let's talk about all the things you talked about.
We realized that the main, you want me to stand?
Yeah. And introduce yourself so everybody knows who you are.
My name is Allison Holmes. I'm a senior marketing and supply chain management major at Anderson. So we talked about the different categories that we need to cover: fundraising, getting the food, transportation, and storing it. So we believe fundraising, we could get schools, they could bring, I believe, boxes of food or bags of food to a high school football game. Or we talked with Ms. Sue about doing like a bowl-a-thon where you can get pledges and you can raise money with your company. Or you can even do competitions between rival high schools, and even in Greenville, they've raised over $200,000. So working with local churches, schools, and companies to raise funds. Shopping, we think you could work with food banks and get donations like they do, and work with restaurants as well. For transportation, we're thinking of like things like Meals on Wheels and reaching out to corporations around the area. For instance, you mentioned Orion Rugs had extra trucks that could help out on weekends. And we even thought about a program kind of called Adopt a Family, where at a local elementary school, a family who does have money and can provide for themselves can adopt a student or family that also attends the school and get food for their weekend throughout the week and send it with their student on Friday mornings so that they can give it to the office and deliver it to that student so they have food on the weekend.
Cool idea. Great. And you had storage as well?
Yes, we were thinking of speaking with churches or local organizations like YMCA or recreation centers to store food there.
Terrific. Great, great, great responses. Okay, so now... All right, your turn. Who's reporting from you? I'm going to come over and stand by you so that you have the benefit of the microphone a little bit for the tape. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Manuel Febrero. I'm French, so excuse my French. I'm going to try to to speak loud and quite in an understanding way. So the bullet points we identify at our table are the following: get volunteers and, of course, assign tasks to these volunteers. Fundraiser, as you just told, social media, personal connection to try to spread the knowledge about what we are doing. Plan what to buy, send volunteers to buy the food, transport the food from the buying place to the warehouse, put in an individual bag what we have just bought, seeking out the school in need and the number of people in this school in need, deliver the bags to the right place on Friday, try to launch some surveys to improve our service, teach the school how to inform the parents about what we are doing to increase their knowledge of the cause and find out how many bags we need to deliver to these people.
Terrific. Excellent, excellent. All of those things have to be done. Excellent. Okay, back in the back. Who's reporting for back in the back?
We decided to outsource all of our activities to the local food bank. We're going to focus on our core competence.
Which is what? Outsourcing?
We're going to hire all. For fundraising, we are going to use our local religious affiliations. We are going to use any Mega Million Powerball lottery winners out there. We're going to solicit for some funds, and our local professional sports athletes who always have a vested interest in the community. So those type of community orientation. We are going to focus on purchasing our food through big quantity discount organizations like Costco, getting Costco membership. But we're also thinking about buying the discounted foods sold at different grocery stores, Panera Bread and things like that that we can use to minimize our purchasing costs. For logistics, I think we had a very innovative solution to move these goods. One is that we're going to use the school buses as they transport students from one place to the other. When they're empty, they can go pick up the food that was purchased and bring it back to our warehouse location, which could be one of three areas: the church, maybe a local daycare center, or the school itself for that. Some other innovation logistics techniques is a daycare bus. And we're still debating. We have a strong debate on this team here. Do we want the long bus or the short bus? And we're still working on that. And we also were thinking about maybe using some of the experts in the field of moving food from one location to the other, the local Meals on Wheels distributors for them. And as they move freight to patrons, then maybe they can go pick up some food also on the way back for that. And we decided that we wanted to form a strategic alliance with the people that are real experts in this area of our local food bank, so we can learn from them their best practices and grow there.
Excellent. Awesome responses. Well done. So all of you, between all of you, you've pretty much covered all the bases. Obviously, fundraising is a biggie. So we have people who donate $10 a month. We have people who donate $500 a month. We have people who donate $500 a year. People who donate, we have one company who donated $68,000. So from the little to the big, we have lots and lots of donations which we process.
The lottery winner.
Yes. So you mentioned the lottery winners. So in July of 2016, there was a single lottery winner in the state of New Hampshire who won $436 million, and it was a single ticket. And so the grocery store that sold the ticket, it was actually a grocery store, Hannaford's, which is a big chain up in our area. The grocery store got a commission check for having sold that ticket of $75,000, to which they added another $25,000 of corporate funding, and they gave it to 5 agencies that serve children in that community. And I walked away with $40,000. The winner turned around 2 weeks later and matched that. So I walked away with $40,000 from the winner and $40,000 from the Hannaford store. So yeah, lottery winners, professional athletes, those are all really terrific sources of big funding, but we rely on an ongoing basis on little funding. We rely on mom and pops. We also rely tremendously, and I don't think any of you really mentioned this, on donations of food. Yes, you did for the high school, but I know Keith fed you that one. So we rely a lot on donations of food, because every dollar of food you donate is a dollar of food I don't have to buy. So I love donated food. So a great story, Exeter Hospital called me and said they wanted to do a food drive in the hospital, and they were going to do it over Thanksgiving. This was brand new. I just started in October. This was in November. And so they called me and said their food drive was over. Come pick up the food. So Keith and I put down the seats in our Dodge Grand Caravan and drove up to Exeter Hospital. And the woman, I met the woman I never met her before, but I met her, and she said to me, "Where are your trucks?" And I said, what do you mean? And she said, "Come here, let me show you." And she showed me an 8x10 office stacked floor to ceiling with food and said, "This is one of 11 departments." So after I had a mini stroke, I said to her, "Can we come back on Friday?" And she said, "Sure." And then I'm like, my eyes had to have been as big as plates, and I'm on the phone calling everybody I know with a truck or a van saying, "Can you come help pick up this food?" And we got a caravan up, including some car dealerships. We got a caravan up to pick up all this food, and I'm calling at the time we were packing in a 10x30 storage unit, and I called the storage company and I said, "Can we have the unit next to ours? We just need it for a week to sort out this food." And in the end, we wound up giving a full van load to the food pantry, a full van load to the high school of snacks, and who else did we gave food all over the place, and then kept the food that we could best use. People gave weird things. People gave like 2-pound bags of coffee, you know, some weird stuff. We've got a stack of the memorable weird items. But at any rate, so donated food is outstanding. Now the problem with donated food, if you think about it, is every single item has to be looked at and checked to make sure it hasn't expired, it hasn't been tampered with in any way. So that's all part of that supply chain process as well. So funding, supply, our storage units are in schools, in churches, in companies. That's where all of our storage units are. And long stories about how some of those have worked well and some of those have not worked well. And then transportation, we've got typically our programs by a month at a time. We have these great arrangements with the grocery stores where we go down, we give them our list, and we walk away. And 3 days later, or 4 days later, the grocery store calls us and says, "Your order's ready." And we get a caravan of 10 cars parked outside the grocery store. They load everything into the cars for us, after we've paid for it, of course. They load everything into the cars, and then we go and they unpack it, they take all put it all into the plastic bins and take all the cardboard away. That process takes about an hour for $4,000 worth of groceries, because we have great teams that do that.
And the
So,
checkout process at the grocery store.
yeah, they already pre-scanned everything, so they just have like 10 or 12 barcodes that they just have to go, and you know, that'll be $3,800.26 or whatever. And we just scan our debit card and we do all that. So that pretty much covers it. So then the warehouse is full of this food. So now let's talk about what food is in the warehouse. So what are you guys putting in these bags?
All right, so we came up with breakfast, lunch, and dinner. For breakfast, we have 3 packages of oatmeal that you can mix with water and microwave, and that came to $1.25. For lunch, we have 3 cans of Chef Boyardee spaghetti and meatballs for a total of $3. For dinner, we have 3 packs of ramen noodles for $1.23. We threw in 3 packages of peanut butter crackers for 82 cents, 7 Capri Suns for $1.68, and 1 gallon Ziploc bag for 6 cents. And the total came to $8.04.
Awesome! Great plan. Covers the calories, covers the food, covers the money. not a lot of variety in there. I might get a little bored with Chef Boyardee spaghetti and meatballs 3 times over a weekend, but that's a great start. Okay, you guys here, what did you come up with? Who's my reporter?
Well, we thought we'd go to somebody that's really good at it, best practice, and an example of a $10 backpack is one 18-ounce plastic container of peanut butter.
Yeah, where did this list come from? Let me guess. N68hoursofhunger.org.
1 can of tuna, 2 cans of soup or pasta and meat, $1 bag of cereal, 2 granola bars, 1 can of fruit, 1 box of macaroni and cheese, and 3 snack items.
Efficient.
And I think that's what we look for best practice.
I see. Okay. All right. So yes. So when I very first started out, the first thing I did was I went to the grocery store, and I started looking at the shelves to see what kinds of things my grandchildren would enjoy eating, and then I put them together in different combinations in the cart so that I could come up with the 2 breakfasts, the 2 lunches, and the 3 dinners. And the list you just heard is pretty much our standard list with some changes here and there. We sometimes do Vienna sausage, we sometimes do mayonnaise, we sometimes do tortillas instead of crackers. We sometimes do, when something's on sale, of course, we'll go and we'll say, okay, let's include that instead of the other foods. So yes, that's pretty much the foods that we do. One of the things that Sue mentioned that I overheard was fruit. So we do canned fruit primarily, but we also do, when it's donated, we don't buy it because we never know how long it's going to stay in our storage unit, but when it's donated, we do things like apples and oranges. Those are the best. You're not going to take a banana and put it in a bag with a whole bunch of cans and boxes. That's not going to go well, or a peach or a plum. But oranges and apples do really well, and the kids love them. And we have a number of orchards that in the fall donate a lot of apples to us, or they'll have an apple picking time, and we'll go and we'll all take a big group of university students and go pick apples, and they'll let us take those away. So we try to use non-perishable but fresh foods when we can, but we can't always. We also have a deal with a local dentist to throw toothbrushes and toothpaste in come December as a little sort of Christmas goodie. And then there are some volunteer organizations that pack goodie bags for like Christmas and Thanksgiving and Easter. Yes?
How about Lindt?
Oh yes, like for example, the Lindt Chocolate Company, every year so far, come Easter time, they've given us either chocolate bunnies and Christmas chocolate Santas for each of the kids' bags. We've had some other really great partnerships. The Children's Museum one year gave us 4 passes for each bag to get the family to the Children's Museum. The sadness is you cannot overestimate the amount of dysfunction that's happening in these families. And I don't want to minimize for a second that these families aren't trying the hardest they can, because they are. But when you are one emergency away from being homeless, going to the Children's Museum is not on the top of your list of things to do. And that's exactly where these families are. They're literally one emergency either before or after the potential of losing their home. So it's really frightening for them, and they can't really be very functional at that point. But they try the best they can. The statistics tell us that 85% of these homes where there are hungry children have someone working full-time outside the home. And let me just tell you a couple of really heartrending stories about kids that we know that have come through our program. One of them was, we started the program in Kittery, Maine, and a little girl was called to the nurse's office after her parents had said she could take home a bag of food, and was called to the nurse's office, and the nurse said, you know, I just want to show you this. This is what you're going to take home today, and you're going to take this home every weekend, and started unloading everything that was in there. And the little girl was practically in tears, and in the end she just grabbed the bag, and she didn't want to let go of it because she was afraid if she let go of it, it wouldn't be hers. And the nurse promised her it would be on the school bus when she left school that day. And lo and behold, every week since then she has been. Another little boy on a Friday afternoon went to his teacher and said, teacher, can I please stay here over the weekend because I know where the snacks are. He knew that he was going to be going home to an environment where there wasn't going to be any food for him over the weekend. Some interesting questions that we get asked regularly: how do you know the children are getting the food? Well, we know the children are getting the food because the behaviors that we use to identify that they were hungry disappear. So we know they're getting the food. I know of one child out of the nearly 3,000, one child who has to go home from school and hide her food around in the bushes because otherwise her parents will take it and they'll eat it. And that's the only instance I know of where a child is concerned about what's happening to their food. We hear anecdotally back from the schools that it makes a huge difference in terms of the children's ability to learn, and that's really what it's all about. Because yes, everybody wants to feed kids. Feeding kids is a great thing, but what you have to recognize is if you don't feed these children, then they grow up hungry, they can't learn. If they can't learn, they can't grow up to be productive citizens in the community, and you wind up with a cycle that just keeps repeating and repeating and repeating. So the way to stop that is to feed them when they're young so that they can learn in school and have the best opportunity to become a productive member of the community, thereby turning around the cycle so it doesn't continue. I know I've taken a lot of your time. Does anybody have any questions? I've got about 1 more minute. Yes?
On your list of mac and cheese, what kind of mac and cheese? Because you mentioned about microwaving being a temperature issue.
The macaroni and cheese is the only thing we put in there that has to be cooked. Oh, I mentioned back at that table back there, somebody said, well, what about ramen noodles? I don't know if you know this or not, but kids today eat ramen noodles right out of the package. And I'm not talking poor kids, I'm talking about all kids. I don't know how they do it, but they do. So ramen noodles don't even have to be cooked. None of the food has to be cooked except the macaroni and cheese, and we only do that twice a month. Usually there's somebody at home, an older sibling or a parent or a babysitter or somebody who can cook the macaroni and cheese up for them. Any other questions? Well, considering this wasn't what you expected, and I wasn't expecting this, I think it worked out really well. I totally appreciate your attention and your enthusiasm and your engagement in the activities, and I hope it means something to you. So thanks very much.